Hi, it's John. Welcome back to FinTech Plus, and thanks for following us again. I am very pleased to be joined today by Tomas Hurcik. He is the co-founder of Orca. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
I was hoping you could kick us off by giving a bit of an introduction to yourself and Orca.
With pleasure. So my name's Tomas Hurcik. I have been involved with Orca for the last 4.5 years. I co-founded the business. Prior to that, spent my entire working life in startups in and around Switzerland, seen 2 IPOs and 1 write-off, which was very insightful in all cases. Big tech and FinTech enthusiast, and happy to express some of my opinions today with John.
Great. Well, thank you for, again, joining us today, Thomas. I was hoping we could get started by focusing a bit on Orca, and then I'll ask a couple of other questions as we wrap things up. Can you tell us what was the inspiration for Orca and how did the company come together?
Absolutely. So a couple years ago, within the sort of circle of people who I'm very familiar with, someone relocated to Switzerland and needed to apply for a tax ruling. Basically, a sort of wealthy 4th-generation family member moving from abroad into Switzerland, and went through the whole process of needing to explain to an external counsel, someone who'd never met them, never heard anything about them, all of the details and the intricacies of the different assets that they had, etc., to try and understand what the tax implications would be. And hearing about this process, just alarm bells went off on my end, and I thought there must be a faster, easier way to do this. And this is really the reason that Orca was made. So we really focus on, trying to help people aggregate, share, and intuitively discuss fairly complicated legal, tax, compliance-related issues.
I think that's obviously something that's very, very much needed. It's a very complicated space, but can you give us a bit of a better idea? How did you go about solving the problem? What was the business model and the technology stack that you used to help get that done?
So in essence, we tried to take a very simplistic approach. We looked at what our users had previously implemented to sort of solve these issues that they were facing. And in essence, everybody worked the same way. We met thousands of people who used PowerPoint or Visio in order to draw structure diagrams, a sort of 30,000-foot view of the world. What do I have and where is it? In addition to their PowerPoint and Visio, everybody was using Excel or some sort of version thereof to consolidate the net wealth numbers. And last but not least, documents were anywhere from physical to Dropbox to SharePoint. And inevitably, people were just running around looking for information about the structure in any different version of the PowerPoint file, looking for information about their financials at the bank or in the Excel, and the documents really could have been anywhere of 10 places. And the goal was really just to find the simplest way of putting it all together. And our goal when we set out really wasn't to be better than PowerPoint. It wasn't to be better than Excel or better than Dropbox. It was just to put the core functionality of each of those things into one place. And it was a very, very simplistic product to start off with. We by no means addressed all of the concerns that our clients had. But I think where we excelled, and it's something that's carried us through to today, is really in trying to put those 3 different pieces of information in one visualization. And this has really been our guiding principle, is to say that, we don't want our users to have to jump around from A to B to C looking for things. We try and surface as much information as simplistically as possible in the same view. So in terms of the technology, Orca is a web-based software application. We do all of the important work in the web client itself. So we actually don't do any processing of data on the servers. This is fairly unique. There's a sort of very specific reason that we do things this way. It all has to do with security. So at the end of the day, it was very important for us as a business that we are not asking our users to trust us. We want to give them an environment that basically is the equivalent of a safety deposit box at a bank, where it's their information. They're the ones who decide what goes in the box. They're the ones who has the key to open and close the box. And at the end of the day, all Orca does is stores the box for them when they're not using it. And this is in essence what we do technically as well. Our clients will log into our web app, they'll enter lots of data. When they're finished in the session, all of that data gets locked up in the box. They then take the key and go away. And Orca basically has all of the data on our server, but we don't have any key to be able to decrypt it. So this is a fairly unique approach that we take to security. And that was a really big part of our technical architecture that went into developing the platform.
That's great to hear, because, of course, those are important factors. The balance of security and transparency is sometimes a fine edge to walk, and it's not surprising that a Swiss-based company has found some solutions to that. I want to talk more about Switzerland as well later, but before we do that, I thought it was interesting because I gather you don't have a typical sort of venture capital financed startup story here. You mentioned the company's been around for about 4.5 years. Can you give us a little bit of insight in terms of how you launched the company and some of the milestones to date?
Absolutely. So I had been in the very privileged position previously of working for companies where startup funding was not really an issue. In all three of the previous companies I worked for in the startup phase, we were very, very well equipped with finance. And there's a positive side to that by all means, but there's also a drawback in that, you can quickly lose focus. And the goal with Orca was to really say, we're going to focus, we're going to be very strict with what we do. So on day one, myself and my co-founders invested 100,000 Swiss francs. And we said, with this, we wanted to launch. And we not only wanted to launch, but we wanted to prove that we had a business. So 7 months later, Orca was live. We had our first 20 clients, and we made 5,000 Swiss francs per client. So we had brought in revenue that which we had invested 7 months prior to that. And at that point in time, we had really 20 phenomenal families on board using the tool, all of which had expressed an interest in investing. And we decided that, it would be great to partner up with them. So 4 of the families came on board. We raised our first external financing round. And roughly 2.5 years later, we brought on another 6 families, bringing the total to 10. And that has been our funding story so far. Very sort of held, close to our chest. Our investors are our main users. Gives great platform for tight feedback loops. People are really invested and really interested in knowing how we're doing. And they're also phenomenal evangelists for what we're doing and help to share the word.
That's a terrific story, and it echoes some of our principles here. I've long worked in private wealth, and I think there's something special about family businesses. It's interesting because you mentioned IPOs and public markets before, and maybe we'll have time to talk about the differences a little bit later. I wanted to talk more, though, about the vision for the company, because it sounds like you've had a really patient but progressive foundation years, and here we are at the growth phase. Can you talk about what the vision is and where you see the company going in the coming years?
Absolutely. So what's been quite interesting for us is how our understanding of our target market has grown over the last years. So we really started out trying to address the specific pain point that I mentioned of this one individual relocating to Switzerland and requiring a tax ruling. So our original clients were very much private clients. These were also, people who didn't have a single family office but were wealthy enough to have one, or single family offices and the like. From that basis, we've just sort of organically stumbled into a lot of additional markets that have been a very natural fit for us, whether it was initially the trust businesses that we encountered, who were obviously serving our clients very closely. Then going from there into corporations, you go from sort of serving the family to serving the family business, who also has complicated legal structures and so on and so forth. Going from there to going to the law firms that service the corporations, both law firms, private clients, and on the corporate side. So what's been very interesting for us has been this growth into many, many different markets. A real focus of ours has been on making sure that we're able to onboard clients in the shortest time possible. And I think right now we've gotten to the stage where we can really get a client up and running in the space of 25 minutes on the system. And having achieved that, what will be very interesting for us going forward is if and when we choose to open the gate to people being able to go onto our website, self-discover Orca and register and start using it without ever having to talk to anybody. This is something we've built up to a lot over the last years, and it's something I'm personally very excited about in terms of our development. Another thing that's been really key in our development is we've just, at the beginning of this year, brought on a significant piece of intellectual property. I had the great fortune last year of meeting a gentleman called Milko Benz, who worked for the last 6 years as the director of operations for the Hasso-Plattner Foundation. That's a single family office based in Germany. The principal, Mr. Plattner himself, is the basically main founder of SAP, and someone whose family office is phenomenally well run, largely thanks to some very sophisticated software which they have in-house. And we have now collaborated with the Hasso-Plattner Foundation and brought on board some of their intellectual property to integrate into Orca, which also gives us not only the option to scale more to sort of our affluent clients who might go onto the website themselves, self-discover and sign up and start using it without talking to us, up to our more sophisticated sort of very substantial single family offices, multifamily offices, or corporations who not only want a tool where they can store information, but they want a set of very sophisticated rules that will analyze it from a taxation, governance, compliance perspective, and highlight anything that they may need to look into or disclose to specific authorities, etc. So the phase that we're in right now is a very interesting phase where we're growing in two opposite directions, almost, you could say. On the one hand side, trying to serve a more affluent clientele who can go onto the website themselves, sign up and start using without really needing any physical interaction or personal interaction, better said. And on the other hand side, we are going onto a much more hands-on sales process where we have really what you'd probably refer to as an enterprise client who will pay a very, very significant sum of money to have a highly sophisticated piece of software that'll be a core part of their business.
Great illustration of where the company is gathering strength and also where it's applying it to develop the business. That's something we'll have to watch in the coming years. I'm interested to hear more. I wanted to ask you something that's key to any startup or growth company or really any organization is the team. And, we've been talking about family business dynamics and organizing all the charts. Startups don't like to get too formal and put in an org chart, but I did want to ask you, what's the team like and what are some of the dynamics of how you're building your company?
I think it's an absolutely core part of any company is the team. And it's also a massive privilege for someone starting their own business to be able to pick and choose who you work with. And it's something I enjoy every single day to interact with the individuals on the Orca team. So great question. We are basically a collection of people. I think Gregor and myself as the original co-founders and Mikko having joined from the Hasso-Plattner at a later date are really the only people with in-depth knowledge and work experience in financials sector. Everybody else in the team are technologists, from designers to product managers to engineers, all of whom are absolutely phenomenal at their job, but bring a really great and fresh set of eyes and perspectives to our work in financial services, because a lot of the jargon, a lot of the things is not familiar to them. And this dialogue has been really conducive in helping us to simplify things down and find common denominators in how to build things. So on the one hand side, the point I'd love to make about the team is just that aside from being phenomenally good at all of their jobs independently, what they bring is they bring this great new perspective to us in terms of how to approach finance when you don't have a finance degree. It's been really interesting how we've chosen to work together as a team. A lot of the people we had known previously and just sort of grouped together in this new environment. Many of our team, however, are completely new people we've never interacted with before. We have people in Canada, in New Zealand, in Croatia, in Poland, in Portugal. It's been very interesting to collaborate from a distance. So incredibly easy nowadays if you set it up correctly. And I really feel that we've benefited from all of the technology also that exists for sort of remote working. And yeah, I guess I could go on endlessly about it. But those are, I think, the two main things. We have a lot of people who don't naturally come from finance, which has been really beneficial. And working from a distance with everybody has also made us more familiar with exactly what it's like for our clients who also have that, who will be liaising with tax advisors in different jurisdictions, family members living across the globe. I think that's been a really positive dynamic for us as well.
It's great to gain a little insight into the people behind the website or the platform, as many people will experience it. I was thinking it would be a good time to actually take a look at Orca and see exactly what it is that it does. Can we do that?
Absolutely. I will dive in just 1 second. I actually wanted to make one more point about the team, just so I don't forget it. I think what was really important to me, having been involved in many startups already, was that all of our team is on the cap table. And that's something that I think my co-founders and I are very, very proud of nowadays, that everybody is a shareholder and an active participant. It also really aligns incentives, and it's wonderful to see engineers, PMs, designers think like business people, as we also try and think like they do. So yes, very happy to dive into the tool.
Well, actually, no, I have a follow-up question just to spice things up again. How did you manage that? Because that's a topic that we spend a lot of time discussing with founders before they've even launched the company. And there's a lot of different formulas and approaches to how you can split equity. What was the approach you guys found most successful?
So, I mean, really, a really insightful question. I don't think there's any right or wrong approach. I think any company does it, individually and what works for them. In our instance, it was the sort of following dynamic. The amount of shares was quite clearly determined by how early one joined the company. To what degree was I taking on risk? Was I coming after we had funding, after we had revenues, or at an earlier stage? To what extent was I willing to, or in fact, this is actually quite an interesting point, maybe, or at least I found it very insightful. We always gave our employees, or our team members, better said, the option to choose between a higher salary and lower equity, or more equity and a lower salary. And absolutely everybody went for lower salary, more equity. That was really interesting, and we made sure that we vested everybody. So myself, as one of the co-founders of the company, I still don't actually own all the shares in Orca that I'm entitled to. We vested over 5 years to make sure we were all in there for the long run, and our team members vest over 2 years. And basically it all builds up to having been in the team, having proven oneself as an indispensable part of it over a certain number of months. It's then rewarded with shares, which we give them then for free. For free, they've earned it with their time, in essence.
That's great. Thank you for sharing more information about that, because I know it's difficult to, especially here in Switzerland sometimes, but it really does help people figure these things out, I think, a little bit more efficiently. So without further ado, why don't we take a look at Orca?
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, our sort of main goal is to get a really high-level overview of our clients and enable them to share this with anybody who might need it, whether it's compliance, whether it's legal tax advice that they're searching for. This is kind of what it boils down to. So what you're seeing on screen is our standard structure diagram. This is designed to be highly interactive, highly intuitive. You can really sort of click on anything to explore, who's above or beneath the family business holding, who's above or beneath the trust. You can blend the beneficiaries in and out. You can go into more detail, say, I'd like to also see the loans that exist, any mortgages that are there, any commitments that might exist. In this case, there's none. You can see also the key people for any of these assets, whether it's board members, signatory rights, powers of attorney. We're really trying here to represent all of the legal relationships that exist for our clients, so that they can quickly and easily see them on one screen and explore them in a little bit more detail. In terms of diving into the detail, this is really an executive summary. It doesn't show in any way, shape, or form all the information that we have in Orca, but from here, you should be able to access a lot of that information. So if you're looking at a number here, like 37.18% the Family Business Trust owns of the family venture holding, and this doesn't seem entirely correct, you should be able to click on it, see the transactions that took place, see the dates, the amounts, any notes that you've added for them, any documents you have, have all of this type of information should be accessible from this diagram, whether it's regarding any of the loans, whether it's regarding any of the functions that you have on screen. So in terms of the board members, where are the mandate documents and all this sort of stuff? All of this can be explored from this one sort of simple, easy to interact with overview. And if you're looking at a structure that is a bit bigger and you say, you know what, today we don't want to focus on everything. Let's say maybe we're not only looking at Mr. Miller, but we've got also his wife on screen. You know, these things can get a little bit large and less manageable depending on the complexity of our clients. This is a sort of semi-medium size structure. Here you can then say, you know what, today, in fact, we're only focusing on a part of the assets. We're looking at the residential real estate. We're looking at the trusts and the companies. We don't want anything else. And in fact, when it comes to this, Kiva South America and Kiva North America, for whatever reason, should also be excluded. So we can come up here and we can take out North America, South America, right? It's entirely configurable. You can do lots of sort of jazzy stuff with it. And the more complicated a structure is, the more you need something like this. So, you know, take something like the London house where the lovely Sophie Miller is 3 times invested in the house, some part of which is held in her name. She has shares in the fund, which owns part of the house. And she's also a beneficiary of the trust, which again owns part of the fund. So, you know, in this instance, we might want to know, okay, cumulatively, how much does she control of the house? So we have the ability here to see ultimately what is controlled when we go all the way up to our ultimate beneficiaries. So this is it. This is sort of our core visualization. Maybe important also to note that we can not only view this as it is today, but we can jump up here and time travel and see how the structure looked at any date in past, see how the structure even looks in future if we're planning any restructuring. And all of the information we could see here, whether it was who owns what, how much they own, the transaction documents, the loan documents, the board mandates, etc., all of that can be accessed also in a list view. So I had pointed out earlier that we were really trying for our clients to replace PowerPoint. That's kind of what this is, or exactly what this is. We were trying to replace their Excel sheets. That's to some extent what this is. Not only for Excel, though, however, this is also where we store the documents, where, you know, everything's automatically tagged and linked for the users based on some logic we have here. Meaning, if you're looking for any financial statements, you've got, you know, 75 documents in here, and you just want to see the financial statements, you just click on them and you've pulled them all up. We now have only the 20 financial statements on view. We can select all of these and we can share these with whether it's our accountant externally, whether it's our controller, whether it's someone for taxation purposes. All this stuff is really quick and easy to get through. There's a lot more I could say, and I'd love to, but in the interest of time, I think that's a sort of quick and simple look at what we're trying to do and how we're doing it.
No, that's great. Thank you for the chance to take a look at things. Not everybody is quite yet at the position where they need a tool like this, so it's always interesting to see, how really, truly sophisticated challenges are being solved. I wanted to ask a question. A lot of what you do is connecting the dots. And are there plans for what you guys offer to connect into other FinTech solutions, whether it's wealth management tools or data aggregation services? How do you look at that opportunity with what you do?
Absolutely. So, I mean, you know, there are people out there doing incredibly interesting things, very, very complementary to what we're doing. The closest or the lowest hanging fruit, put it that way, the ones that we're working on right now are integrations with reporting solutions. So if I maybe just explain what I mean with that, a reporting solution, at least in my personal terminology, would be someone who would say, or for instance, like Altu, let's say you have a client who has bank accounts across 10 custodians, and they want to know absolutely everything that's in those bank accounts, all of the different assets held in the different portfolios, the performance figures, the cash flows, all of that sort of stuff. These tools technically will normally know the portfolio and everything within it. Orca takes the very different approach to say we want to know that a portfolio exists. We do not want to know the contents of it, but what we'd love to understand is everything above it. So is that portfolio held by a company? Is it held by the principal directly, and so on and so forth? And this is a very natural fit together. So they help us to complete the image going down. We help them to complete the image going up. And there we have very interesting discussions with players similar to Altu in the market in different jurisdictions, whether it's America, whether it's Switzerland, whether it's Asia, where we talk about specifically that melting of minds. Additionally, we talk to data room providers. We talk to people doing e-signatures, trying to help our clients alleviate more of the administrative stuff when they need to sign things. There's a lot of really interesting people out there for us to work together with. And nowadays, I think everybody's also building in such a way that it facilitates this. So it's been very natural conversations that we've had, and really excited to start launching some of these soon, and hopefully publicizing about them as well.
That's terrific to hear. Building on that, I think it's an interesting case, and I wanted to ask you, when it comes to actually solving these complicated wealth management challenges, what do you think are some of the things that can cause, challenges? But why, for you, is it an interesting space where there's a real opportunity to focus on?
So I think if I talk specifically about what Orca is trying to do within that constellation, I think we've probably addressed the most boring of all of the challenges, which is in essence the paperwork and the compliance side of things. And it's not the big glamorous thing that people, with the big flashing bells, lights and whistles. And it's really resulted in it potentially not getting the attention it deserves, because I like to refer to what we do as the necessary evils. There is not a person out there who doesn't pay taxes, or who isn't needing to assimilate information for compliance to open a bank account. Simplistic stuff like that. Also a lot more advanced stuff. But these topics are quickly and easily overlooked. And they tend to also be very much in the remit of legal services, which is why Orca is also occasionally referred to as legal tech or reg tech, which I think is a very, very blossoming market with colossal amount of potential. But I don't think it's been around, so to say, for as long as FinTech has itself. So I can't speak for all of the challenges that an independent asset manager would face with regulations and stuff like that. That's really not our remit. I know there's great tools out there, and I have a huge amount of respect for what they do, because it is a very, very complicated matter that they deal with. Ours is maybe a little bit overlooked. Not to say it's not challenging, not to say it's not very interesting, and not to say, which I believe we've proven in our tenure so far, it's not massively relevant.
Thank you for that. I wanted to ask a question. This is probably a two-part question. You've had an interesting experience working in international contexts here in Switzerland, and also having worked in both private markets and public markets with the IPO, and now working in family wealth and more private investments. What are some insights that you can share in terms of the type of evolving role that Switzerland's playing? Because, whether it comes to ICOs and the way that that's popped, or the way that SIX and the stock exchange is looking to find new listings through some of its innovation work, it seems like there's a lot of dynamic of trying to foster new risk capital and balance that with other ideas of conserving wealth. And I thought you would have some interesting ideas on being a fintech founder in Switzerland, but also looking at the wider world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly no expert on the matter, but I'm very happy to share just some observations that I've made. I think Switzerland there's two parts to a lot of things these days. One is what is technically possible. So what does the blockchain enable from a technical perspective? The other thing is the regulatory perspective. And anybody working in financial services knows that you need both to be aligned. And there, I think Switzerland is really, really at the forefront of things. I think there's a huge desire from all parties, from the regulatory bodies, from private interests, from commercial interests, all to move in a direction where you can actually pilot things here and and start to create the first global precedents for things. Things like EIDs, the fact that I see often drones flying around outside piloting blood samples, I believe, from one medical facility to another. It's whether it's FinTech, RegTech, legal tech, whether it's drones, anything like that. I think Switzerland is committed to developing all of these fields, and they're doing a really good job of it. And what's very clear as well is that Switzerland also just attracts phenomenal corporations. There's a huge amount of people here, very well educated. You can not only live off the talent pool from within the realms of Switzerland, but you can also really easily attract foreign nationals who want to be here and who may have come here to study and want to stay, etc. So it is a really fertile breeding ground for it. I had the great privilege a while ago to interact with a gentleman called Krieger Wenger, who, in my opinion, has really been preaching this for decades almost, and is to a great extent, it's people like him who we have to thank for the places we are today.
That's a great point to start wrapping things up on. I had one last question. We're in the middle of COVID, and we're talking about the increasing pressures of change and solving complicated problems. What are some of the ways that you and your team try to stay balanced and find, opportunities for reflection in life?
Right. So we have, I think what really works very well in our team is that everybody has a good degree of autonomy. So if I sort of pull back to what we said earlier, that everybody is a shareholder, this really means that everybody's incentives are insanely aligned. And it means that we have no need for oversight within the business. So we have an unlimited holidays policy. Anybody takes holiday if and when they want for however long they want. The same thing applies to working from the office or working from home. It's a tool. Our office is there if we need to really, sit together and brainstorm. But if we can do it from a distance, we can do it from a distance. And I think that setup has been it's meant that COVID wasn't as big of a change for us as it could potentially have been. And I think the main issue that we face is trying to encourage each other to take holidays and to really switch off when we're gone, because we're a small team. Everybody's highly invested emotionally and financially. And there's just a desire to keep doing good work. So the issue we face sometimes is to make sure people do go on holiday enough and make sure they switch off when they're on holiday. And what I miss is the physical interaction. We don't have that as much. We used to, being a team where we have people abroad, we used to fly everybody in once a quarter at least, which we haven't been able to do for the last 12 months. There we definitely feel a strain. It's very weird to work with people for years on a slog and not see them once personally. But hopefully we'll find a solution to that fairly soon.
Indeed. I've been making the most with interviews like this, but I'm looking forward to seeing everybody again at some major global events and, of course, doing business face-to-face. I want to wrap things up there because we've covered a lot of ground and it's been a really interesting discussion, and especially to see what Orca is doing because, as I say, it's not the sort of stuff we get to look behind the curtain and get insights from often. So thank you, Thomas. Are there any final words, especially for the audience from FinTech Plus who might want to learn more about Orca?
Yeah, I mean, maybe nothing grand, but always happy to share experiences. We've had the real privilege. I mean, Orca was involved in the Venture Leaders 2019. I really, you notice how much we can gain from talking to others in similar situations. And I think we're always very, very pleased if we get the opportunity to share our experiences, to hear from others. And yeah, if anybody would like to talk to us about what it's been like founding the business, bootstrapping it ourselves originally, going through 2 financing rounds, learning how to do sales internationally without ever having a background in this. I think we can shed some light on some topics. Certainly not experts in any of it, but it's been working for us, thankfully, so far, and be thrilled to share that experience and also hear from others on that side. I think we can all learn from one another.
Great. Well, that's a wonderful note to finish up on for the day. Thank you again, Thomas, for coming and sharing about Orca. We will be putting all sorts of information about how to contact you in the description and look forward to catching up in the future as things develop. So again, thank you and have a great afternoon. Ciao.
Thank you, John. All the
Bye-bye.
best.